When the vagina is itchy, can the same be transmitted to the spouse during sex? So it depends. If it is a sexually, so we have things like yeast, okay? Yeast infection it's more really about the vagina itself and the flora, flora and fauna. Unakumbuka vitu kama hiyo? We have just normally occurring bacteria in there. So if it's just maybe yeast infection, some of them, they are not transmittable, but some are. Yeast infection is usually the most common cause of vaginal itch and vaginal discharge. So those are things that are treatable. But when now it starts becoming full smelling, still others are not sexually transmittable, others are. So it usually depends, okay? So that we see it. If it becomes persistent, there's something we call a high vaginal swab. Nowadays we have a lot of antibiotics, because most people have misused antibiotics. We have a lot of resistance, okay? So sometimes we can just swab that vagina, especially uko juu high vaginal swab. We go to the laboratory, we test it, then we test it against antibacterial, then we see this one is persistent, this one is resistant, this is the particular one that can kill this one. Sawa. Okay. Is it common to have nausea symptoms in your period? Some people do have, some don't. So, watu wengine ni tofauti. My daughter is 4 years old, always has rashes around the poo hole. What causes this and how can we treat it? Now, rashes around the poo hole is a question where you take the patient, angaliwe. What kind of rashes? Remember the story I told you? I've never forgotten that lady. And by the way, sometimes people say, doctors, yani kichwa yetu ni mbaya, unaona tu vitu unaenda. Let me tell you, for sure, we never forget. We just have found a way to deal with it, and you also protect yourself. But some things, between your sleep, between the time you're in the bed, trying to sleep and the sleep has not come, but you've closed your eyes, things flashes. So this particular one is, I will not have an answer for it because it depends on which kind of rash. Some people have there's a particular kawom, we call it tichura. It's interesting. I love it because it sounds like a shrub in itself. But nonetheless, unakuta some people have maybe worms and then itchy poop hole sometimes. Some people need to be dewormed. Some rashes might be sexual. Some rashes might be allergy. Some people who have babies with nappies may be allergic to the nappies or whatever it is that you're putting there. So different rashes are different and there are different treatments. Unaweza pata this rash, its treatment is different from this one, and if I give this treatment to this one will be worse. You understand? Like if I give a different treatment for something else, it will be worse. So that particular one, I highly suggest that. Na usiende ati anakuanga na rash na hana. Daktari si Mungu. Tulianza hapo. We are just as human with just a small inch of knowledge. Because tulijifanya tulienda tukasoma kidogo tu, but we are not God. So some people will come and say anakuanga nayo na iko wapi saizi haiko. It will be hard for someone to treat you, to be very honest. So in that case, when this rash is there during that time, na unakuta saizo ndio maybe umeenda holiday ama umeenda job huko because you really has to go, but during that time it is important and prudent that that rash is actually seen and diagnosed. And sometimes you may come to me and I don't know it as a doctor. I might always go, but then I'm a proponent of second opinion, third opinion, fourth opinion, because I appreciate our inadequacies too, okay? There's no knowledge of everything. So if you come to me and I'm not able to help, I'll tell you, I'll refer you to somebody else who is better at it than me, or sometimes I may decide to take a picture and share with one of my colleagues if you give me the permission to nasaidiana. Sawa. But I don't really have an answer to that and how it can be treated until I see that particular one. For a young child, what causes itchiness to her genitals and how can it prevent it? For a young child, remember, it's still the same story. Remember? Same story for the gated community, hygiene and all that. paper towels, sitting on those toilet seats, etc. Those are things that you need to avoid. But nonetheless, yeah, dryness down there, etc., etc. Sawa sawa. Is having menstrual periods a sign of danger? No, menstrual periods are very normal phenomenon, especially when you reach the reproductive age. Sawa sawa. By the way, sometimes for the female girl child, okay, we have seen areas where a baby girl has been born and then blood, a little bit of blood is coming from the vagina or breast milk. We call it witch's milk sometimes. Uko kwa ototology. In the neonate area, uko 1 to 3 months hapo hivyo. But usually that is because of the effect of the maternal hormone on the child. Sawa sawa. The effect of kale ka hormone kalipita kwa uterus, uterine placenta, baby. Okay? So unakuta sometimes you have that itch that hormonal influence to that female child. So if you're talking about that, then with time, that hormone itaisha, it will just get out, and then it is okay, if at all it was that. That also happens with what we call the witch's milk. It's just purely because of the maternal hormone inside the fetus that it will just clear with time, if that is what that meant. What causes dryness during sex? We answered this? All right. Receiving menses after 2 weeks, is it normal? If not, what causes it? Now, the menstrual cycle is they're different, as I said, different people have different menstrual cycles. What is normal is anything between 21 to 35. Sawa sawa. So, in the month of January, somebody who has menses, 21-day cycle, will have menses how many times? Twice. Think about it. If I have a 21-day cycle, then I'll have it on the 1st of January, then probably on the 22nd of January, I'll be still having a normal menstrual cycle. You understand that? If I'm having a 35-day cycle, okay? If I'm having a 35-day cycle, and it is the month of February, and it usually goes 28 days to 29 days, if I had the last menstrual cycle on the 29th of January, or maybe 26th of January, will I have menses in February? I will not have menses in February. So different people have. So what is normal? Anything between 21 to 35 days. If it is regular, we have no issues. But if it is every 2 weeks, that means it's 14 days. That's a bit too much. Then it requires a check. Some people also have intermenstrual bleed between a normal cycle and a normal cycle. Occasionally, some people have a small ovulation bleed. Once the winner has been removed from here, you have a bit of ovulation bleed. It can happen. But if it is every 2 weeks, then that is too much. It requires a check. Sawa sawa. And the check can be anything. It can be because there's something in the cervix, maybe an issue with the uterus, an issue with some of this adenomyosis. It can be an issue with anything, so you need to have a check. Sawa sawa. Frequent candidiasis, how do you treat it so that it stops recurring? We answered it, right? Yeah. How do you get to know the fertile days once you're trying to conceive? Not a regular cycle. Now, this is a very intelligent equation. It makes sense. When you do not have a regular cycle, that means the cycle is this. When you start having menses, what happens is during that time, new recruitment occurs, okay? So we have many eggs that are recruited. Remember I said, once you recruit several, then the one, it's like there's a hormonal thing, there's a hormonal dynamic there, but the one that they continue to grow, it's look at it like a marathon. Sawa sawa. So there are many people who are growing. So the one that becomes the largest, it has more estrogen, has more nutrition, largest in size, is the one that later gets ovulated. Sawa sawa. It gets ovulated. Now, I'll not talk about the ones that reached but did not get ovulated. What happens to them? The body resolves them. Almost within 3 months, it's resolved. So some of those sijui ovarian cysts you hear here and there. If I do, how many of you are here? 100? Trust me, if you are 100, if I do pelvic scans, 20% of you will probably have cysts. Because if you're having normal menstrual cycle, some of those normal, the ones that are being recruited, getting bigger, sijui nini, those will be seen as cysts sometimes, and we do nothing about them. And in case you insist, kabisa, oh, take me to theater, tunaenda tunatoboa, tubulu, then tunaacha, then next time itakuja tena. So we leave that one alone. So once it has been recruited, you ovulate. Then once you ovulate, there's a hormone that happens, then it reduces, then later on, it's when you ovulate, the uterus is told, prepare, mgeni anakuja, we are going to sort out it. Maybe expecting a conception does not happen. Then 2 weeks after ovulation, you start having your menses. When you start having your menses, recruitment starts. And that happens all through your menstrual cycle until you reach menopause. Now, it's a bit harder for that person who does not have normal, regular cycle. Why? Then we do not know whether you ovulated or not. So sometimes this prepared, the uterus prepared, nothing came, it prepared again, nothing came, so you're actually bleeding because you just have too much blood. But you did not ovulate. You understand? So most of the abnormal menstrual cycle, they are anovulatory, meaning they are without ovulation. Chances of getting a conception with that is a bit lower than somebody who has a normal menstrual cycle. Sawa sawa. So with that, then it is a bit harder for such a person to know the fertile days. Therefore, it requires a check. Sometimes we can induce the ovaries. There are some drugs that we can give. And usually once we induce the ovaries, then you can expect twins, triplets, quadruplets. You should be open to that. Sawa sawa. Because you might have more than one egg. Sindio? And remember, in a sexual contact, the number of tadpoles that are created, they are in millions. All right? The sperms are in millions. So you should be ready to be open for a possibility of more than one pregnancy. And sometimes we even step up. We can try this medication, it refuses, we step up to another, because we usually try it gradually. We just don't eat like a mosquito with a hammer. You know, there's always this protocols of stepwise trial, stepwise induction. And at some point, even if it refuses, then we have other artificial reproductive therapies that can be tried, okay? Now that one, we can even send you to a fertility specialist who is going to induce you, ripen those eggs, remove it, then get your spouse or the one you want to father the child, and then we can even take the sperms, put it, then we return it to you. Then you continue. That we even do for people who have blocked tubes. You remember? Remember those ones that we either blocked and you want reverse the kakatana, or the ones that were blocked before. You remember? So some people can have blocked tubes, but the ovaries are perfect. The uterus is perfect, but the sperm cannot reach the ovum. So we still can take you to a fertility specialist. That's a bit expensive in Africa, in Kenya actually, but it's still done. Then you get this one, then you get the sperm mixed together, then meanwhile you're being primed. The uterus also has to be primed in readiness for whatever is happening there. You're being primed, then you continue with the pregnancy. Even for those whose the wife is totally fine or the female partner is totally fine and the spouse is the one who has a problem. So we find that maybe ideally in a sperm of around 2 to 3 ml, you need to have around at least 15 million sperms concentration. Okay? So if you find, for it, that's why I was telling you, that study that was being done was trying to reduce that to 2. Okay? So you may find somebody has maybe 5 million. Chances of natural conception is low. But at the end of it, we just need one sperm. One tadpole, just one. Okay? So part of these artificial reproductive therapies may just decide to take this egg, then to look for that one, take it and inject it inside that ova, and then it grows, then unarudishiwa. It has also been done with those people who have donor. Maybe some people have conditions that cause you to have premature menopause at 30 years. All right? So, because it means this ovary, the follicles degenerate very fast, okay? So, on that case, you can just decide to help. Surrogate, or maybe zako zimeisha. I can get your sisters there. If they decide to donate, they are prepared, the egg is removed, the sperm of your spouse, then mixed, you're given surrogacy, it works. Though the bill is still in function because there's so much about it. Some people can make it to business. At me kazi yangu, I'll do reproductive career, help people, things like that happen. I'm telling you, they happen in this Kenya here. You get this one, this one of ours, eh? Not another Kenya, this one. So the bills are still being straightened. So that reproductive health bill, it's still, because if I am broke, hey, I can offer myself as a surrogate, sindio? And it has happened. Okay. So I've answered that. So person with a not so regular cycle will struggle kidogo to note the regular cycle or to note when they are, because some of those cycles are anovulatory. So it will need probably the help of a gynecologist or a fertility specialist. If I have a cyst which makes me have very painful periods, can it be removed surgically or how is it treated? I told you there are several cysts that we do nothing about. Sawa sawa. Remember, in this whole recruitment process, you can recruit 7, 10. You ovulate 1. Have you ever asked yourself, what happens to the 9? The designer created a system that these 9 are reabsorbed. Okay? And so, you may come next month and I find a cyst. It might be just what we call a physiological, a normal cyst. Just a cyst that was in the process of getting bigger, to be ovulated. All right? It might just be a physiological cyst. I will leave it alone. But now when it becomes more than 5 centimeters associated with other things, then you're like, you need a check. Secondly, a cyst in a postmenopausal mother then is also worth an extra check. Because remember, the hormonal cycle, that milieu imepungua. Sindio? So what is it doing there? You get? But in the reproductive cycle, it's a bit different. So different cysts, there are those cysts that sometimes can grow big. Also depends on the size. You might even have a cyst that is 10 centimeters. Now that becomes an issue. There are those cysts that sometimes have hair, teeth inside. Those are removed surgically. They do. Yes. I'm telling you, this world is crazy. It has things like that. You remove them. The beauty about them, they're not cancerous, those particular ones. But yes, usually we examine them. Sometimes we do x-rays. We see whatever is in there. And we usually score them. How much blood supply is there. How much septation. Septations ni fences inside there, How much debris is inside there. Some are just these normal physiological cysts, but something bled into it. Those are the things. There are those we can wait out. There are those we remove. So it's usually good to have a check so that we see. There are those we can even follow up. Then you say, this one is increasing at a high rate. We just remove it. And there are those ones we follow up. And then the body decides, I am my own doctor. I don't need you. It sorts itself out. And that is fine. There are those that we remove. And then later on, they still recur. So there is always a follow-up check. Sawa sawa. After having sex, I think it is better to wash our vagina. How can we wash? Kindly explain. After having sex, it's okay to shower. Shower ni mzuri. Leave the vagina alone. The lactobacillus is going to sort that vagina. Sindio? Because you are not greater than the creator, my friends. The person who designed that system, to me, is perfectly perfect. Sawa sawa. I agree. You can wash out all the debris outside, blah, blah. It is okay. Vagina, tumekubaliana. Tumekubaliana tafadhali. I think it has been a problem. And you see, when you start washing, you'll be tempted to keep washing. The vagina will be tempted to bring problems. Then you'll continue, and it's a cycle hautamaliza. Sawa sawa. And you see, by the way, when you still do that, you have sex. It will be painful. You've removed all the defenses. You've removed all the things. You know, part of those things that are there is creating the mucus lining, the lubricant. Iko happy vikendo, nowhere. So just leave it. Leave it alone. It is self-cleansing. The designer, ali design. You can't design it better than the designer. Sawa. Management of endometriosis, I think I mentioned this. Sawa sawa, its effect with estrogen, and most of what we do are trying to reduce the effect of estrogen, and sometimes we do it surgically and remove. Sawa sawa. But still note, it is a chronic condition. It's something, it's like a marathon that we will fight together. It's a walk. It's not something like Ouma or cold, that we get and then it shares. It's something, it's good to know. It's always good to be prepared that you're probably in this walk for some long time. Sawa. What causes beards to grow in women? I think I had mentioned it. Sometimes we talked about the relative amount of estrogen, the female hormones, to the relative amount of testosterone, relatively, and their balance. This cycle is very perfect. There are those times when this is like this goes down, this is like this, different, and the amount of hormones is different. So if you have more testosterone, relatively more than what you should have with that estrogen, then you can have, apart from growth of beard, you can have a male voice, you can have poor sexual characteristic, reduced. And if, by the way, if inside the uterus, you can have some of these people who have ambiguous genitalia. You kind of think, is it a clitoris or is it a penis? There are those confusions that do happen because of those. Those are genetic issues that cause that formation of those testosterone, etc. Sometimes even the adrenal glands produce testosterone, things like that. Those are the causes. So usually, even sometimes people who have polycystic ovaries, this, when we recruit, there is a way in which these cysts are. But there are those people whose cysts that are supposed to be producing this ovary that is supposed to be producing this hormone is a bit inadequate enough that those ovaries go around the ovary. So there are like many cysts of the same growth. Ideally, it should be, how you live class 1, class 2, class 3, like that. So those people may also have issues. How do you cure them? It usually depends on what the patient wants. You may have, how I cure it in a 35-year-old may be different from how you will do it in a 21-year-old. Because a 35-year-old may desire fertility. A 21-year-old may probably do not desire fertility at that time. You see? So it depends on what we are sorting for you now. Still very individualistic. This one I've answered. How fatal are fibroids, especially those outside the uterus, within the wall of the uterus? Now, the fibroids within the wall of the uterus, rarely do they have menstrual issues, but they'll have obstructive issues, okay? Because within this gated community, see, we have neighbors. One of the neighbors tulisema ni bladder. Sindio? One of the other neighbors is the rectum. Sindio? So if it is very big, it's obstructing imelalia bladder. That means you'll pee a lot. And not because of UTI, just because you have reduced the bladder capacity. Sindio? I have this space, but your fibroid has reduced that space, so I have reduced bladder capacity. Or rectal issues, etc., etc. Sometimes they can even grow to a size of a fetus. You may actually think somebody is pregnant and has been pregnant for 2 years. You're like, pregnancy. Yes, because it's that big. We have removed things that are 4 kgs. We have removed them even in numbers, even like 60. Okay? It is. It's very possible. If I was to show you this phone, you'd be shocked. There are many. Okay, but usually after they're removed, you take into, and by the way, sometimes they regrow. So it becomes a bit of a biological issue and a social issue. Because say for instance, a fibroid can regrow if you're not, I told you, the uterus, you don't want to give it a baby, it will create its own. I'm serious. So you find that we tell this mother, maybe you can endometriosis, fibroids, deliver. If you are able to get a baby, then maybe at 35 years will ask me, where is the man? I'm like, I don't know. You get a baby. My job is to tell you get a baby. Okay? So yes, they are not fatal, but they can disturb. They can disturb a pregnancy to a point where some people, if they are so big or etc., they can get miscarriages or preterm labors or still have a CS instead of a vaginal birth, just depending on how they. And by the way, there are those people who just have fibroids and still deliver very well, just have no problems. So different people just have different works. Okay? That's why it's individualistic. I think I'll answer 4 more. I'll give myself 5. Please put an alarm. Put an alarm for me. I'm tempted to finish this, but I'll not be able to finish. Okay? Which is the right family planning, especially if you have high blood pressure? Okay? Talk about herbal effect for FP, the side effects and the advantages. Now, I'm one person who is good at answering what I know, and I'm good at not answering what I do not know. To be very honest, with my training, I have more of conventional medicine rather than maybe herbal part. So I'm not very proficient with the herbal, especially I know there's like a Chinese medicine that people use every month, something like that. I'm honestly not able to answer that because we don't know the chemical composition, and most of what I'm able to answer is because of the chemicals that I know they are in and that I'm able to stand for. So I'm sorry for the person who talked about the herbal effect. I'm not able to answer the part for the herbal advantages and its disadvantages. Si muna prefer ukweli? Ama ni wadanganye tu? No, it's not worth it. Sindio? So, the right family planning for somebody who has high blood pressure, first of all, it is important to ask, how long do you desire contraception or conception? Because if you're done for, totally, absolutely, totally, we can funga this thing. Sindio? So because they are the permanent ones, we can tell the guy to, yes, and hopefully still maintain. We are praying for families. We prayed for families. The prayer leader helped us pray for families. Hopefully still maintain a single family unit. If not, if it is not long-term, then if not permanent, then the long-term ones are okay. Kopati, it is if you have blood pressure. But the issue is that you may have blood pressure. Most of the time, blood pressure and diabetes go together, or blood pressure and other comorbidities. So it's also good to have a check, because if these hormonal medications are not very good for patients with high blood pressure. So that means you'll not be able to take pills. You'll probably not be able to take the injectables or the implant. So probably you're ending up with IUDs. Okay? Is folic acid recommended throughout pregnancy and other vitamin supplements? No. Folic acid is recommended even before pregnancy. Sawa. It's very good for the development of the babies, and it is known that within the tropics we have an issue with folic acid. So yes, part of the preconception care is taking folic acid. Sawa. It is recommended before pregnancy and throughout pregnancy. Sawa. Other supplements, yes, we give folic acid. The pregnant cares that most of us are laid to sometimes usually has around 400 micrograms of folic acid, but there are those people with whom we want higher doses depending on their conditions. Patients who have elevated pressures, patients with twins, patients with anemias, patients with maybe systemic lupus. Those are the conditions that we will increase the amount of folic acid depending on the individual persons. How many CSs are recommended and what age is good to have the last CS? Now, this has been very controversial. At some point, we were talking about 3 CSs at most, but we have said, the last time I was in Kenyatta, I think we did someone who had 6 previous scars, and she still refused to have a BTL. She still refused. Have you ever talked to a patient and talked to a patient and talked, and then you send somebody to talk to a patient who still refused? Okay? So, well, this, usually we say the more, then the more the chances, the more you need an early gyna review during your pregnancies. Okay? Because the more they are, the thinner the place that we cut, because it's still the same lower uterine segment. But nonetheless, with the advent of good science, the advent of good approach into the, most mothers can now go to hospital as soon. There's always individual birth plan. It's a bit hard to say how many, but usually we start having that conversation when you have had maybe 3 CSs, so that you now start planning. But it still means that you can have the 4th CS and the 5th CS. Not fully advocated for, but please note that once you have delivered once by CS, you only have one possibility of a try of a vaginal birth in a double setup, okay? But if you've now have had 2, utazaa zote CS, and it's still safe, okay? Na usikuwe mtu wa Jehovah Witness mwenye hatataka damu, tafadhali, please. Is it recommended to cut hair down there? We answered it? Okay. What is candidiasis? What is cantata? Yani you people have decided to have worse handwritings than myself. Candidiasis. If it is candidiasis, we talked about it. It's the yeast infection, right? And the reasons that causes it and how to sort it without having to use medication. Do sugar levels in the body cause vaginal itching? A patient with diabetes, one of the ways we can know, actually, there are those we have known just because they've had recurrent vaginal infections. Then you're like, why? Tumetibu, she's doing all the things right. You know, somebody's doing all things right. He's taking medication, he's not dodging, he's having cotton panties, dried outside. No? Then now we start checking other things. And yes, a person who is not very well controlled, this may be part of the recurrent infections that they get. And once they are well controlled, this reduces. 3 minutes. Is it okay to use panty liners? That is fine. Most of the time people use it at the end of the period. You know the spotting that happens? Just provided you change and keep hygiene. You know, somebody can have a panty liner the whole day. Then that becomes a problem, okay? So sometimes some of those changes are just purely hygiene changes, because generally speaking, that area is hot. Kwanza, during this hot season, that area is hot. That's number 1. We also have just normal vagina. You know, the body doing its own thing, just normal vaginal fluid, all right? So that change, provided you don't keep it for so long that now it becomes the nidus or the place that brings this moisture that causes you now to bring you more harm. Is it okay to shave the vagina area or waxing? Situlijibu? Orgasm problems. Sometimes there is, sometimes it's not. How do we sort orgasm problems? I think I mentioned a bit about sex, and we say the physiology of sex or sexual contact for different people is different. There is always the preparatory stage, then there's the place that you go up, then there's the +2 phase and the orgasm. And women can get orgasms more than men, easily, more than men. But nonetheless, remember, sex is not only physical. Remember, we said it's emotional, it's psychological. You know, you don't bring me stress and expect a perfect sexual encounter. You understand? So there's also that aspect of communication, the aspect of connection, the aspect of emotional stability. You understand? So those are all the things that encompasses this physical act of sex. All right? And sometimes this communication, I always say, it's always good for the partners to communicate. It's always very important for the partners to communicate, because what works for me may be different from what works for somebody else. You know, what I would enjoy and would probably bring an orgasm is different from what will work for somebody else. Sawa sawa. Very individualistic anyway, but remember, it is not only a physical function. Sawa sawa. Being too dry to have sex, still the same. I think this is the same thing. Sawa sawa. But then we still also have sexologists, all right, who are also able to give more information than I do, and it will be okay to visit one. The last question. What are the challenges? These are 3 questions. Okay, let me see. What are the challenges of having babies in your 40s? Somebody who is having a baby at 24 may be different from someone who has a baby at 40, because of your age, chances are the things that we talked about, things like hypertension or elevated pressures in pregnancy. It's not a must, but you are more likely to have it compared to the 24-year-old, say. Diabetes or pregnancy-induced elevated sugars are still more. But nonetheless, there are things that you can always do about it. It is easier for a younger one to carry a pregnancy. You get that this even a person who has had different labors or many children, you'll find that it's different for the one you got earlier and the one you got later, just because of the age factor. Sawa sawa. So this is a person who will need continuous clinics, continuous baby checks, continuous supplements, a check of the sugars, a check of the blood pressure, okay? Tetanus, zipewe, all those things, and follow up in time. But nonetheless, we have very many success stories of mothers with pregnancies above 40. Mtu asikudanganye. There are so many success stories of mothers, provided you have good follow-up. Pain on the left side before or after, or is it before or after menstruation? Pain after menstruation. Cramps we talked about. Sindio, I think we talked about cramps. Yes, but I said a pain that is going to stop you from going to work, going to school, doing your normal routine things is a pain that needs a check. Do not say at Nilisema it is a must you feel pain. No, do not die with these pains. You are still supposed to continue with your normal functions. Menstrual period should not stop you from your normal function. So if it is a system or a cycle that is stopping you from a normal function, then you need a checkup. It's okay to check and say it's okay. All right? So usually do tests, ultrasound. Sometimes we even do MRIs. Sometimes we even do a laparoscopy just to check inside there for the times that we do not know also. I told you when the doctor is an idiot and the patient is pathetic. Yeah. So we still have, and there are always ways of referral to other specialists when you're not able to answer that. Now that we have been washing our vaginas thoroughly, what do we do to come back to factory setting? Stop it. Simple. Factory setting, you just stop. You guys have really been washing these vaginas, eh? Achaneni na vagina tafadhali. Using panty liners on a daily basis, I don't think it's not, I wouldn't condemn it, but I think the whole idea is just be dry. Personally, what I'd condemn is panties that are not able to absorb the sweat and the heat and the vaginal fluid. Okay? Something that is going to cultivate the moisture. Remember, that place is warm. Women are warm people, literally, at heart and at the gated community. So keep us dry. Dry, clean, you don't visit us. Sawa sawa. I think 3 questions. What brings hemograms at the papa hole? This is I think, hemorrhoids. I think we mentioned it, huh? Is it good to do without panties? Hey, some people go commando, especially after birth. But how do you hold because after birth people need to, like there's blood, the endometrium that is being shedding. But he commando, hey, after menopause. Eh, but you still have, as much as we have little vaginal fluid, we still have something. We still have something. Well, that one I will research and I will get back to you. Sawa sawa. Janet, who is she? She was my contact person. We have not heard about it before, but I'll research. To be honest, right now I don't want to do guesswork. I've not heard about it. I advocate for cotton panties, but then I will research and get back to you with a scientific and evidence base. Okay? Basema nimetoka na homework. Explain to us about the human papillomas virus. I mentioned about it. It's usually there, then the body takes care of it, then after some time, the ones that are not taken care of are the ones that progress. Sawa sawa. What connection does it have with cervical cancer? It has all connections to cervical cancer, especially the most nini ones, the most aggressive ones. Sawa sawa. 16, 18, 33, 35, there are several subtypes. So indeed, we still advocate for, especially our young girls. And you know the reason why they talked about 10? 10, we are assuming that the lady has not had debut of sex, so has not been exposed to the human papilloma virus stage. And then now we are talking about 10 because every place has resource setting problems. Unaniget? Kenya does not have enough for all of us. Then we see, for the future, let's sort out the ones that have not yet started sex. But even then, I know there are several counties that are doing it. I think Kiambu and others, around 5 that are doing it. But I advocate. Somebody had mentioned about the fear about infertility. That fear is not there. So it is advocated that our girl child are able to get early. Interestingly enough, is it Sweden? There's a country that is even giving it to their boys because the girl is okay, then the boy brings the HPV. Then the girl sorts it, then the boy brings the HPV. Then the girl sorts it. You know, those changes are happening in their vagina. So there are other countries that have been able to even give their boy child. But you see, that's resource issues. So Kenya, the only reason it's those ones, it's the others. If you're not that age, utalipa kupata. But that age is the one that gets it free according to the KEPI, Kenya Expanded Program of Immunization. So it is okay. What causes vaginal cancer? Vaginal is different from cervical, but they are neighbors, and the same thing that will cause vaginal cancer is the same one that will cause cervical cancer. And the same protective mechanisms are the same protective mechanism too. And by the way, long time ago when I was an undergraduate, we used to say that, oh, cervical cancer is for people with many children, over 40. These days we've even seen people at 30, at late 20s getting cervical cancer. So things have changed. Panty liners safe, we have talked about them. Can one use them every day? Just remain clean and dry. For whatever it is that will keep you clean and dry, it's okay. Panty liners, are they healthy? I'll not answer that again. Can one have a pregnancy if you have polycystic ovary? Yes, you can. Okay? Yes, you can. With a little bit of help, a little bit of induction, yes. And sometimes there are those who have just had it without us. You know? That can escape ovulation accidentally, may escape conception, may pattern tadpole, sperm, etc. It has gotten. So yes, it is possible. Internal tamponing, e.g. OB, are they healthy to use? Yes, they are okay to use, but remove them regularly. Oh, by the way, it is just last year that I had a patient with vaginal itch and vaginal discharge that has been there for long. Then sometimes we take shortcuts if we have long lines, which are not good. So that's a conversation for doctors. Then I was like, no, let's just check this thing. And I checked, and it was a lost tampon. A lost tampon that somebody put and forgot and forgot and forgot. Okay? So change regularly during your menses. 6 hours, change. Even if there is no blood, for cleanliness purposes. But keep yourself clean. Do not touch. Okay? Sawa sawa. I have finished them. So thank you very much.